For the last 6 years, and especially throughout 2020 and pandemic, I have hosted and led virtual connection labs to invite people to make meaningful connections even though they're pixelated. And so in this video, we're gonna unpack how do you bond with a remote team? And in particular, I'm gonna share 4 really simple activities. Now, I'm pulling these activities from a sea of failures and failed attempts to create really meaningful connection and bonding. Because by facilitating virtual connection labs with thousands of people every month for a long time, right, I have learned a few things not to do, and I've learned some things that work really well every time. So I don't know how you landed on here. I don't know if your group is, the channel's designed for leaders and educators, but I don't know exactly your context, your organization, your team. You know that best. And so as I say in every single one of my keynotes or workshops, I'm inviting you to, from this moment forward, to ruthlessly steal and reinterpret every single thing that I say and do and apply it to your own context. By the end of the video, you're gonna have a little bank and library of activities, tools, and ideas to refresh your own virtual online remote meeting context. I am Chad Littlefield. Lovely to be in cyberspace. Let's get into it. The 4 activities I'm gonna unpack are named 60 Removal, Curiosity Ping Pong, QOTD, or Question of the Day. And then the last one, 4, if you've been following the channel at all, you know I love this idea of connection before content. But the last activity I'm gonna unpack and share is connection to content. I think actually this is one of the most practical, lowest hanging fruit ways to bond as a remote team because, and this is true with all the activities, you can weave this into what you're already doing, right? I think sometimes when we think, oh, how do I get my remote team to bond? We think about like blocking off a half day to do some virtual escape room or something like that, which is fine, right? That could be great, maybe, potentially. And like getting healthy, it's much better if you're able to weave walks throughout the day and a little bit of broccoli here and there and not just be healthy for one day and then the rest of the day let it go, right? If you wanna be healthy as a team, if you wanna bond as a team, doing a little bit in bite-sized chips and chunks throughout the week will get you there much more sustainably and effectively over time. So number 1, 60 Removal. This came to me from a bit of an experiment, actually. I was facilitating a retreat in person with a group of 10 HR professionals who had all worked together for a minimum of 3 years, some of them up to 10 years, and so they knew each other really well. And there was some cultural, personality, conflict stuff going on. And one of the exercises I decided to do, and this was the first time I ever led this, was I took this deck of We Connect cards, 60 questions in them, and I laid them all out on a table, and I challenged the group to remove every single question that they could answer for the whole group. So if they felt they could answer this question for the entire group, then they were permitted to remove, anybody was permitted to remove that from the table. And by the way, there's a link below with a free version of the deck. And so you can get the deck actually shipped to you, but that costs money. And I think free stuff is good. So there's a link below as well to access a free digital version of these cards that you can use in a remote context to send the link out to everybody and do what I'm suggesting right now. So the challenge would be get everybody the questions and ask them to remove any questions, and they could just type the question into the chat that they feel like they could remove from the deck. Now, what's cool about this, and I learned with this HR group, is I have never, since now having done that activity dozens and dozens and dozens of times with different groups, I have never ever once had a team remove more than 5 questions. And I don't know if that's a testament to the fact that we just don't connect and ask questions like this to each other, or it's a testament to the fact that this is a good deck of questions and we did specifically design the deck to have questions that accelerate trust building and connection, but also questions that people haven't typically been asked before as well. So they're relatively psychologically safe and accessible, but also things that are novel. And that's really useful for bonding as a remote team. The more, you think about if you were able to snap your fingers and everybody knew the answer to this question, and this question, and this question, right? You could say that the bonding in that team would go up, right? The knowledge of personal backgrounds also creates really great communication shortcuts. There's a whole decade or so of educational psychology research that says when we connect to each other. It creates communication shortcuts. It allows us to remember what each other are saying better. We are able basically to understand and be with that person quite a bit more. So the activity goes, you invite everybody to type in questions into the chat that they could remove, that they feel like they could answer from everybody in the group. And then the questions that remain that nobody could feel like they could answer for the whole group, those become weekly questions at every staff meeting or every time that you get together. You kick off the session with that question of the day. And that leads to the second activity, which is this idea of a question of the day, QOTD. You might have seen this in on YouTube videos or in live streams where there's a question of the day and you could leave your comment with the blah, 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 blah. And I think there's something really cool about doing that in a remote team, especially because adults tend to ask so few questions per day compared to kids who are just voraciously curious about the world. As adults, we very quickly sink into this mindset of knowing, right? Where I've learned enough about you, and so boop, put you in a box, move the box over, set it and forget it. As opposed to, if you want to bond as a remote team, you've got to do things to shift the group into this mindset of learning. And I would argue that these two, if we were to unpack them, that this is typically a very me-focused mindset, and this shifts to a very other-centric or we-focused mindset. And when you can create that shift overall in a group, extremely, extremely useful. So a couple ways to do the question of the day activity, this second element. You could use it as connection before content and start your meetings with a question. If you didn't have any time at all, you could just have people drop their answers in the chat. If you had some more time to hang out, you could consider splitting people up into breakouts, small groups of 3 or 4, discussing that question, then coming back together and perhaps popcorning out something that surprised them about their answers or something that they noticed about their conversation, etc. Some way to deepen that. That's more like the 10-minute version. The unofficial start, just as people come in, unmuting and sharing their answer to this question, and you might even just literally hold up a question to the screen for people to answer. Another way to use question of the day, though, is at the end. And it actually gives people something to look forward to in their meetings. If they know every single meeting or every single monthly staff meeting that you have ends with a question of the day. And so this is one that I actually just used on a virtual keynote with 300 people a few hours before recording this video. And it is, what is something you would like to do more of? And so this was, I framed it as more of an application question. So, hey, from the last hour experiential interactive keynote that we just did, what would you like to do more? What is something you'd love to steal from the last hour and bring into life beyond this moment? Right? And so that was a cool way to take question of the day and kind of create some momentum for the rest of the day. So think about it at the beginning, middle, or end, just that idea that there is some question being asked really deliberately for the purpose of connection and understanding the other better. As long as that's happening per day, that would meet all my criteria for that QOTD activity. Third activity, curiosity ping pong. I really, really love this one. I stumbled on this when a client came to me and said, I just hate how everybody, it's the default for everybody to be on mute. It just creates this inorganic, silent vacuum feeling in virtual meetings. And so how can we break out of that on-mute, silent vacuum and create a little bit more of that feel of organic connection? So Curiosity Ping Pong is my current solution for that. And the idea is, right at the very beginning, you might ask a question like this. You might hold up a question, invite people to just type a quick response into the chat. But then, and this is where round 2, the ping-ponging happens, you invite people to go to the chat and find something that they're naturally curious about, based on what that person has shared, and then unmute and ask that person a question. So let's say Kate, my wife, said, one thing I would love to do more of is exploring museums around Pittsburgh, right? I could unmute in that call and say, Kate, I'm really curious, what is one of your favorite museums in Pittsburgh? Or what's one of your favorite venues to visit in Pittsburgh? And she might say, Phipps Botanical Gardens, right? In that moment, I've taken surface level curiosity, brought it one layer deeper with a question, but I've also invited people strategically and kind of cleanly off mute. So I've invited one person off mute to ask a question, boop, and then that person, whoever was asked the question, has been invited by the question to unmute and then answer that question. And Curiosity Ping Pong is continue doing that. Let that go for as long as you would like to. That could happen again at the beginning of the meeting, at the end. You could do this same idea actually after a presentation or after a group presents something. You could even put up a slide to say Curiosity Ping Pong. I'm just gonna hold this up and whatever you're curious about, unmute and ask. right? So this idea of curiosity ping pong is just that you're creating this little question, unmute, question, unmute, question, answer, unmute, question, answer, and it's ping-ponging back and, I shouldn't say back and forth because it's not going between two people, it's going all around. If you were like really all in, you wanted to make this a whole thing, you could say that we're gonna curiosity ping pong until everybody is asked a question and everybody answers a question. That would probably be practical if you had 6 to 12 people in a meeting. Any longer than that, we might fatigue curiosity ping pong and wanna play a new game. And then last but not least is connection to content. There are a lot of ways that you can connect people to your content and make your content more visual, more experiential, more interactive. But in this video, unpacking how to bond with a remote team, I want to share with you one of my favorite ideas of question templates. So do you see how this question is open enough that you could fill in anything related to your content and it would spark a discussion about that content. Another really great way to harvest the collective wisdom in the group and not just rely on one person blabbing content is, let's say you're gonna talk about, let's pick something especially unexciting. Risk management. We'll go back to our HR group. So we're talking about risk management with people. You might ask, what is something you know about risk management? And you could, depending on the group size, either split people out into breakouts or in the chat, or have people come off mute and do that ping-ponging answer. What is something you know about risk management? And just sharing that with the group to access some of that prior knowledge. Anything you say after you do an activity like that to talk about risk management will allow people to meaningfully connect themselves to the content. And so in terms of how to bond a remote team, you're probably a team because you're working together towards something. And so it's great to do connection for connection's sake, but it's also really productive and really smart for remote teams to connect in between and throughout their content as well. And when you use question templates like this, it allows you to customize to whatever content you're talking about, but it kind of forces you to design a session for contribution rather than consumption. It forces you to design your content for contribution rather than just consumption. If you liked these ideas, but you're looking for more of like a thing to help a remote team bond, reach out, drop us a line. There's info below. Get in touch. We run virtual connection labs with people all over the planet, teams of all sizes, to help make meaningful connection and engagement really easy for you. So feel free to drop us a line. And if you liked this video, you will love this video on how to make virtual meetings and online learning fun. I'm Chad Littlefield. Lovely hanging out in cyberspace. Have an awesome day.